Hello, fellow biologists. My name is Jonah Klein, and today I'm going to be schooling you on the Pascagoula map turtle, which is also called the Mississippi map turtle and the Gibbon's map turtle. The scientific name of this species is Graptemys gibbonsi. So the genus Graptemys was first described in 1817 by the French naturalist named Charles Lesueur as the genus Testudo, which was a catch-all genus for most turtles. And then in 1857, Louis Agassiz, who was a Swiss-American naturalist, coined the genus Graptemys. But the species gibbonsi wasn't described until 1992 by Luvick and McCoy, who realized that the species Graptemys barberi was actually multiple species. It's believed that the genus Graptemys diversified around 6 to 20 million years ago due to sea level changes driving the dispersal of them across different riverways. So these are riverine turtles. They're fully aquatic, and thus they have broad and fully webbed feet with hydrodynamic shells that allow them to navigate waterways. The carapace of these species gibbonsi are a brown to orange color with ornate pigmentations and pronounced keel on the vertebral scutes. The ornate pigmentation on the shell is what gives them the name map turtle, as it looks like a topographic map. The marginal scutes have a saw-like appearance to them, and the legs, tail, and head are a pale yellow to olive color with dark stripes throughout them. And as you can see, the plastron also has that pale yellow to olive color with the dark stripes on it. This species tends to live about 25 years and shows a lot of sexual dimorphism between the sexes. So males have a plastron length of generally 3 to 4 inches and weigh about 130 to 300 grams, whereas females, the larger ones, they can get 6 to 10 inches in length, and they can weigh up to 900 to 1,200 grams. So about 3 to 4 times that of the males. This is an image of an adult female. And I just wanted to include this, as later on we'll circle back to the way that her head is kind of large looking. And as time goes on, they tend to lose some of the pigmentation of the oranges and browns, and they end up looking more yellowed out as time goes on. So they are listed as endangered by the IUCN due to the loss of their populations. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service lists them as a species of focus, and they have been proposed to be listed on the Endangered Species Act, but as of now, they have not been listed. They are also under the Appendix 3 of the CITES, which basically mitigates international trade of this species and international selling. Taxonomically, they fall under kingdom Animalia and phylum Chordata, class Reptilia, in order Testudines. They are in family Emididae, and then the genus Graptemys, and this species is gibbonsi. Here is a phylogeny of family Emididae. Showing you in the red circle is the entire Graptemys genus, which is fairly large. And they're most closely related to Malaclemys and Trichemys species. The genus Graptemys encompasses all map turtles, and all map turtles are found within North America. They're a great example of allopatric speciation. So they have a megacephalic clade and a sawback clade. In the megacephalic clade, the females develop enlarged heads for their diet. So you'll see in that figure there that A is the megacephalic clade, and B, they have like a larger head shape than C through F, and then D is the lower mandible of them. The sawback clade has the narrower head, so that would probably be E and F. and they have very pronounced vertebral spines, which are those shell spines. Here is a breakdown of the genus Graptemys. I've got the gibbonsi genus or species circled in red, and they're again in the megacephalic clade. Gibbonsi was split into two species around 2010 using molecular phylogenetic analysis. Perlensis and gibbonsi were grouped as just the species gibbonsi, but in 2010, they realized that the Perlensis is within a different river system than the gibbonsi, so they decided to delve into the genetics behind it and realized that they are in fact two different species. And then the outlier taxa of this group is the Graptemys geographica, and as you can see here, genetically, they're all the way at the top up here, and they have a larger range than other species do, and they're much more cold tolerant than the other species. I wanted to highlight some morphological differences as well. So on this upper left image right here, we have Graptemys gibbonsi, which is the species that we're focusing on. And then we have another species here, which is Graptemys flavomaculata. And then we have the Graptemys geographica. So there is quite a bit of difference in morphology. And then this map here shows North America, and it shows where the different members of the megacephalic clade lie within North America. And these gibbonsi are located in southeastern Mississippi. And interestingly enough, they're also sympatric with the flavomaculatums right here. So they exist together. The flavomaculatums tend to be much larger than the Graptemys gibbonsi do. So Graptemys gibbonsi is endemic to the Pascagoula River system of Mississippi, which includes the Pascagoula River, the Leaf River, and Chickasaw River. Their total range is about 760 kilometers, and this species is rarely found away from the waters. They spend most of their lives within the streams themselves. This right here demonstrates the shaded areas are the areas that they've been recorded in. And again, they do not stray far from the waterways. They're not found very far inland. So for their habitat, they prefer medium to large-sized freshwater rivers and creeks that have sand or gravel bottoms. And these creeks and rivers have to have accumulated deadwood for this species to exist, as it's an important factor for their foraging and their basking behaviors. The habitat also has to have high populations of mollusks, and again, they live sympatrically with Graptemys flavomaculata. Their diets vary between life stages and sexes, where males and juveniles eat mainly aquatic insect larvae, and mature females eat mostly mollusks like snails and clams. Studies have shown that the places they forage also vary, so it's a bit of like a niche partitioning situation with them, where males and juveniles will have bits of wood in their stomachs, which indicates that they forage for their prey on the dead wood that has accumulated, whereas females will not have any of the wood, so it's assumed that they eat mollusks and snails and clams on vegetation or on the bottom of the rivers. So this is a diurnal species that has a reproductive season in between April and July, and they brumate during the winter months. Females reach maturity around 15 to 20 years, and males, it takes only 4 to 6 years. And then they do have nesting that occurs on sandbars and sandbanks, and they shove other turtles out of desirable basking spaces. So the deadwood is limited in the areas that they're at, and it is becoming more scarce. So there's more competition with the basking logs. So they have increased agitation and conflict between one another and other species trying to get like the best area. Individuals stay in the same 1,000 square meters for their entire lives, except for females who may occasionally travel farther to search for nesting sites. Females also lay their nests in layers with 1 or 2 eggs in each layer. I couldn't find a picture of this, but they had a fun description. So basically, they find a good sandbank or sandbar, and they dig a little hole, and then they lay 1 to 2 eggs, and they use their back legs to kind of shovel some sand over it, and they lay a few more, and they kind of just repeat the process until they lay all 5 to 7 of their eggs. And researchers have found what they have nicknamed, interestingly enough, to be desperation nests. And these desperation nests are just ones that do not end up being covered and do not end up being fully laid because the turtles are interrupted for some reason or scared off. And Graptemys gibbonsi, these guys are considered the second rarest member of the genus, with Prolensis being the first rarest. So for means of imperilment, there are declines in mollusk populations because of water pollution, such as excessive sedimentation, and that affects almost every North American river at this point. And then river channeling for agricultural land, so moving the river away so that there can be more fields. So the reduction in mollusk populations results in a reduction of food sources, which increases a skew of the sexes, and it favors males more than females because, again, females mainly eat the mollusk. Just a little bit more on the mollusks. There are 13 species of mollusk in Mississippi, and they've all been listed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as threatened or endangered. And some further things that affect the mollusk populations are reservoir construction, dams, agricultural pollution, and sedimentation. Another thing that impacts the turtles directly is habitat destruction, such as removal of dead wood from rivers. The top right image is actually from a boating forum where people were cheering him on for picking up the dead wood out of this river, which is good for hobbyists because it does damage boats, but it's not so good for, of course, the turtles and other species that rely on dead wood. There could be other river systems in Mississippi have experienced quite a bit of channeling, damming, and impoundments for like transportation and recreational boating. The Pascagoula River has not had that happen yet, but there is a large fear that soon enough it will happen as populations of humans continue to grow. So there's also been an increase in predation due to anthropogenic activity. So populations of raccoons and possums have been on the rise as they can thrive within urban environments. And then invasive species that have been introduced, such as feral swine, all predate on the nest of Graptemys gibbonsi, reducing the recruitment rate. Hunters have also been seen using the species as target practice. They've also been seen in the bycatch of fishing, both recreationally and on larger scales. And they are being caught for the pet trade. So here's from a website called Turtle Source. And they're selling them for about $30, the started hatchlings, and then a bit more for like the other ones. But yeah, they're fairly cheap. And the reason is they're all mostly wild caught. And that's because it's hard for us to get them to breed in captive care. So it's easier just to grab them from the wild and sell them online. So populations have declined about 80 to 90%. since the 1950s, and that represents a time frame of about 2 to 3 generations. And this may mean that there's been a loss of genetic diversity, but there haven't been many genetic studies done on the species, so we don't quite know. Again, the skews are trending more towards males, meaning that there are less females to actually lay the eggs. So again, recruitment rates are down. Their only density estimation for this population was done kind of recently, so we don't have a basis for it to see how far it has changed since anthropogenic activity has been increasing. But there's about 34 individuals per kilometer of river. At one point, they were found at an equal ratio with the sympatric species Flavomaculata, but now they're only found in about like 1 gibbonsi to 5 Flavomaculata. Some things that have been helping, or hopefully will help, are Mississippi laws. In Mississippi, the commercial use is prohibited of this species, and possession of this species is limited to 4 individuals. So if you're caught with having more than that, you could face fines. And then hopefully this will mitigate and deter people from trying to capture them in large quantities for the pet trade. So another thing is land management has been a pretty good positive for them, as part of their habitat falls within the 35,000 acre Pascagoula River State Wildlife Management Area, which limits hunting seasons and requires permits. The Wildlife Department also does education for proper use of natural resources and conservation of those resources. And they conduct research and population surveys on native species within the wildlife management area. So these 2 maps depict on the left the north portion of the wildlife management area, and the right one shows the south portion. And the yellow lines represent the wildlife management area. The yellow diagonals show areas where hunting is permitted. The blank open areas show where hunting is not permitted. And then the little bit of gray inside of the yellow lines right here, this right here represents privately owned land that they do not yet have ownership of. This grid shows some hunting is allowed in this area, but it's a bit more strict. The Nature Conservancy has also been helping a lot. So the wildlife management area was actually something that the Nature Conservancy purchased and then handed over to the Mississippi Wildlife Department. And then currently, the Nature Conservancy is now working towards acquiring more land within the Pascagoula River system and helping to establish what are known as conservation easements with private landowners along the river. So I decided to look a little bit more into land easements, and basically it is when a landowner donates or sells like their rights to their land to an agency or organization. Conservation easements, the rights forfeited are ones based around land development or subdivision of land, and forfeiting their rights for these easements can be held accountable for like over generations. So this is a long form of protection that can occur. And one important factor to keep in mind is that these landowners are still allowed to use, depending on what easements they have agreed to, they're still allowed to use this for hunting or means of other economic gain, or sometimes even farming, just as long as they're not subdividing the land or developing any, I don't know, like a parking lot or a Dollar General on it. Other conservation that might be aiding in the general conservation of Graptemys gibbonsi are efforts against climate change, such as our focus on reduction of greenhouse gases, and then waterway preservation through the control of agricultural runoff, any bans on damming or channeling of the waterways, as well as trying to preserve the mollusk populations there would be a big one. And last but not least, save the basking log's top dog. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or talk to me in class, or even shoot me an email. I am open to any questions. I'm not a turtle expert, but I will become one